Hi everyone, my name's John Lacey. Thank you for joining me on the live stream today. We're live on LinkedIn and YouTube, so if you're joining us in the chat, please say hi and let me know where you're coming from. On today's show, building scenes in OBS. Do you know your scene collections from your sources? What about your nested scenes? What is OBS anyway? Who uses it? What do they use it for? And should you be using that? All that and more on today's live stream. Now, I suspect I say this every week, but it's been a very, very crazy busy week, and I'm so delighted that it's the weekend here in Australia. And for those of you that haven't quite reached there yet, I hope you enjoy it when you do. Let me just tell you a little bit about some of the music I've been listening to this week. I'm such a fan of CDs. I often give vinyl collectors a hard time, but I'm so nostalgic for CDs. They're amazing. So I've got a whole bunch of CD singles here, a bit of Alicia's Addict, Halo, Texas. Do you know the band Texas from England? They're awesome. Bit of Danny Minogue there, bit of M People as well, and some Bjork. And I've also been listening to Roxette this week. Such a great 90s band. Obviously Marie's no longer with us, but what an extraordinary talent she was. So yeah, enough about the music though. We're really here to talk about OBS today. So again, hit me up in the comments if you're out there watching. If you've got any questions or any comments along the way, I'd love to hear them. But let's get into our content. So what is OBS anyway? OBS Studio is free and open software for video recording and live streaming. OBS Studio is available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. You can download the software from obsproject.com. I can already hear saying, but John, isn't OBS just for kids playing games? Well, no. OBS Studio is just a tool and it's up to you how you want to use it. Do you need to teach something? Do you want to demonstrate the products you sell? Do you want to have a more professional presence on video calls? Do you want to create short feedback videos for members of your team? All this and more is possible with OBS Studio. Let's unpack the three main ways you can use this incredible piece of software. Video recording. While many know OBS Studio primarily as streaming software, you can also record videos to your local computer. You can set up your scenes, hit the start recording button, do your thing, hit stop recording, and you have a video. This could be as simple as a short screen capture or image slideshow, or as elaborate as a keynote presentation. If you're recording to MKV format, simply go to the File menu and select Remux Recordings. Find your original MKV file and export it to an MP4 that's ready to upload to social media, YouTube, or wherever. Video streaming. Obviously, this is what OBS Studio is predominantly known for. You can stream to YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere that will support a streaming API key, really. Going live can be a great way to connect with your audience and encourage audience participation. With services like Restream and StreamYard, and even with OBS plugins, you can stream to multiple platforms at the same time. Virtual Cam. Some of you, no doubt, spend a lot of time in video meetings, and my heart goes out to you. But for the purposes of this video, I want to direct you to a really cool feature of OBS Studio called Virtual Cam. Install OBS and you'll suddenly have a new webcam option in your settings for tools like Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, and Zoom. You can set up your scene and that's what the other people in the meeting will see. This could be as simple as changing how much space you personally take up in the frame, but it's also a wonderful opportunity to incorporate branding elements such as logos, colors, fonts, and promotional messaging. So there's a little introduction to OBS Studio and why you might want to use it. I asked the good people of LinkedIn during the week if they used OBS Studio, and I do suspect I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit because 100% of you said yes, you did. Although we did have one comment from Josh Alliston who said, I don't myself, but I've worked on the back end of an online trivia company and it seemed to work well. I'd never used it and went live 30 minutes later after pressing the buttons. Incredibly flexible, which I'm sure can make it intimidating in the short term and super powerful in the long term. And I think that's true. I think it's very powerful, but it doesn't need to be complicated. So you can get started really, really simply, and you can decide really where you want to take that. So speaking of getting started, let's check out how we can actually build our scenes in OBS. Okay, let's have a look at how we can set up a scene in OBS Studio. There's a few different things to note here. We have the profiles, which are really just about different settings that you might use within OBS. We have our scene collection, which will actually let you have different collections of scenes. So if you've got different arrangements for a particular presentation, or maybe you've got something for your work and something for your side gig, whatever it may be, you can sort of arrange these, and they do come in alphabetical order. So if you want to put them in a specific order, it's often a good idea to put the numbers in front of them. So we have down here our scenes. In here we'll have our sources. So what I want to do right now, let's actually go to our scene collection and we'll create a new scene collection in fact, and I'm going to call it demo collection. So now you'll see that we're basically starting from scratch. We've got our scene over here. We've got nothing in our sources. And we can start adding things here to our scene collection, depending on how we want to actually set up our presentation. So what I'm going to do to start with, let's go down and add a new scene. And I'm going to call this one John Camera. And click OK. So down here, we can actually add sources to our scene. So there's a whole bunch of things in here. It's worth noting that there are a few that won't be in here by default because I've added some plugins, and I'm happy to talk about those in a little bit more detail later on. But right now, let's go to our video capture device. And I'm going to call this one Sony Camera because that's what I'm using. You'll see that we've got the dialog box coming up here, so I can choose which device I want to use. In this case, I want to use the Camlink 4K. Again, if you've got a web camera, you can select that from this list. That's perfectly fine. And you'll see here that you can actually see what my camera sees right now. So there are a whole bunch of settings here. Generally speaking, I probably want to leave those alone. But what I do want to sort of call out is that if your camera also captures audio, which mine does, there are some options here as well. So you can decide how you want to work with that audio. In this case, I don't really want to use the audio that's coming from my camera. I actually want to include the stuff that's coming from a microphone. So in this case, I'll go use custom audio device. And in this case, I will use my my Rodecaster Pro stereo channel. So depending on what your setup is, you can pick that from the list and we'll go okay. Now you can see that I'm here. There's a couple of problems with this. Obviously, I've got a green screen behind me, which you can currently see, and you can also see a whole bunch of other stuff here that I don't particularly want you to see. So what we might do to start with, let's actually right click on the Sony camera and we'll go to filters. We actually have a number of different filters here. So there are audio video filters at the top of this dialog box, but there are also effect filters. So if I go down to my effect filters and click the plus sign, I'm going to grab the chroma key. You can change the name of that one, but in this case, that's pretty self-explanatory. And you can probably see that the portion behind me that was green is now gray. So that's awesome. I could tweak those settings, but they look really good. So I'm just going to leave them alone and I'll go close. At this view, you can sort of see that there is a little bit that's maybe not as chroma keyed as well as you like. So, I mean, I could go back in and tweak that. I don't think I will for the moment. Obviously, I still don't want you to see the clothes and other things that are behind me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my camera. I'm I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I'm just going to drag those sections in that I don't really want you to see. And I can do that on both sides. I mean, I can do that from the top as well. And you may need to think a little bit about how you're positioning your camera and yourself and rearrange those things as necessary. So essentially now, obviously behind me, it looks black at the moment, but I can use this particular camera scene in a number of different ways. So let's actually come up here and I'm going to rename this scene because I like to, my first scene, I like it to be sort of a start scene, if you like. So I often, I'll probably put a color in there. So we actually have something called a color source, which is literally just a block of color. So again, I could give that a name. I'm going to just call this one gray. And I'll go okay. And from here, I can select a color and it'll fill that. So if you want to pick a color from here, you certainly can. You've got the hue, saturation, and values, or red, green, and blue. Even an alpha channel, or the HTML colors, the hex colors that I like using. I think we'll try B, 6 Bs. We'll go okay. So that's a block of color. I mean, I could change how much of the screen that fills up for me for the moment, but I think that's fine. I'll leave that as is. Generally on my start screens, I'll probably want to include some text. So again, I can go to the plus sign and I'll hit the text GDI plus. And I just want this text to say coming soon. So again, I'm just labeling my sources so I know which one is which. This will bring up the properties for this. So I can go in and select a different font if I want to. I'm quite fond of the Open Sans. So I might go semi-bold. 256 is a nice large size that I've used previously. And I can go coming soon. This is actually defaulted to white. Obviously white on a gray background is probably not enough contrast for us. So if we scroll down in this dialog box, I can select a different color. And I might go black. And we can click OK. So the other thing I would often do is if I'm setting up a stream, I'll usually have some sort of artwork that is associated with that. So I'll probably put that on there as well with my image. And I'll show you how that works in a moment. Just if we have a look at our text again, if we right click and go to filters, there are some effect filters that might be useful here as well. So if I hit the plus sign and go to scroll, for example, and again, I can change the name of that filter if I want to. I can sort of adjust how this scrolls. So, I mean, let's just move that down a little bit so you can see what it's doing. Maybe I can have that scrolling. I probably want to come in and actually change that text. So I can add some extra space between here. And you'll see now that that'll actually scroll across the screen, which is fun. Obviously, that's just an example. I must admit, I don't usually do that on my streams, but it's something that you could potentially do as well. So we've got our starts scene there. So I can go and add another scene and I'll just call this one introduction. Again, you can call these whatever you like. As long as you understand what they are, that's great. The other thing too is if you want to rearrange the order of the scenes, I can hold down the mouse button and drag it up, or I can use the up and move down buttons that are at the bottom of that dialog box. So I'm going to actually add some images in here. So if I go to the add button and go to image, I've got a number of different images that I've sort of built out as separate assets in Photoshop. And the first one is my gradient background. So I might just call it that. And go OK. And I can browse to that particular resource. So I believe it's that one there. And go OK. And I'll continue this process again because I've also got a gray bar that I like to incorporate into my scenes. And let's find that one. And I've got my logo as a separate image as well. So I can go image and I'll just go logo. And we'll just browse for that one as well. And I must admit, in the Photoshop file that I've got, I've actually, the entire thing is 1920 by 1080. So these things I don't really need to resize any of this stuff. It'll come in the way I want it to be. So now we've got a number of different sources within our scene. And again, if I want to change what is on top, I can sort of hold down the mouse button and drag it around. Obviously, in this case, we kind of want that logo on the top, so I'll put it back where it was. Try that again. And now I can actually incorporate my other, I want to bring myself into this scene. So again, I can actually add another scene. So this is what we call a nested scene. And I want to bring in the John camera one that we had earlier. So there I am. I'm kind of on top of everything, which isn't quite what I'm after. So, and I might just lock some of the other elements in place so I don't accidentally move them around. But now you can see I can sort of drag and move where I want to be in relation to the rest of the scene. If I want to make this a little bit smaller within my scene, I can just grab a corner and it will resize it proportionally, which is wonderful. And again, if I wanted to make sure that maybe I'm underneath the gray bar, I can just sort of change where that appears in here. So depending on how you want to work this, there are a number of different options there. So now I've got a start scene. I've got my introduction, which uses my nested camera scene. And the reason I like to use the nested camera scene is because if I bump my camera, I might need to make little adjustments to what I want it to look like. And if I have a single scene, I can sort of come in here and crop this here. And those changes will be reflected everywhere that I'm using that nested scene. Whereas if I just added my camera sort of individually all over the place, I'd probably need to go in and tweak those things separately. So we've got this scene with me in the middle of it, and I can actually, I probably want to use a lot of these same elements, but I probably want to change how they relate to each other. So rather than starting with a brand new scene, I can actually right click and go up to duplicate. And again, we can give this one a name. So I will say browser share. And again, keep in mind, you can rearrange these, your scenes in an order that makes sense for you. I'm actually going to open a new browser on another window that you won't be able to see. And I haven't really planned this, but what I might do is I'll just go to my website, such as it is. And down here, I can go and add another source. So we have a few different ways of sharing things that are on our computer. So I can actually share a display capture, which will show everything basically on my window. So as I was saying, we can share everything that's on our screen with the display capture. There is also the browser capture. But in this case, I want to actually share a window capture. So it's going to show you a specific window on my computer. I'm going to go window capture. I'm going to, I'll just say johnlacey.com. So that's what we're going to be demonstrating. Okay, so we can decide which of the many things, and I've got a lot of things opening on my computer. So give me a moment just to figure out which one I'm looking for. It's this one, in fact. And you'll see that I've got my browser open. I've got Chrome open to my website. There are options to capture the cursor, the client area, and different things. So I'm going to go OK. In this case, I'm kind of more interested in the web page itself rather than all the things around it. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key. I'm going to just drag that in. So I just want to demonstrate the website itself. I could hide the scroll bar as well. In fact, let's do that. Let's just bring that in a little bit. And now I've got this. So again, I probably don't want it to fill the entire screen. I could sort of move that behind me. Oh, just grab that one and move it down behind the camera. And you can see I'm there in front of the web page now. The other nice thing about this is because it's live, I can sort of scroll. And you'll see that that's reflected over here as well. In this case, I don't know that I necessarily need to be in the middle of this scene. So what I can do, let's actually grab me in the screen. Oh. And one thing I do find is quite useful, if I don't want to accidentally move things around, I will just hit the lock and that'll leave them in place. I can come in here and I might even just move myself off to the side of the screen. I'm just holding down the right cursor key on my keyboard to sort of nudge this in very, very slowly. But I just find that way, in some ways, you've got a little bit more control because I know I'm not accidentally bringing it up in the frame in the way that I might if I was also using the mouse. So I think that's pretty good here. So again, let's unlock our website. Let me drag that back over here. Maybe I want it behind me. So now I can sort of talk about the website. I can go to the browser it's in. I can scroll down. I could potentially call things out that I'm seeing here. And we're good to go. So we've got that there. So you can see that it's relatively easy to build out an interesting scene that you can sort of use in a number of different ways. We've spoken previously about how we can use OBS Studio to stream, to record, and to use the virtual camera. So there are those different options. Let's actually add another scene, and I'm going to call this one video. So something that I certainly do a lot if I'm streaming is I might want to feature some pre-recorded material. So if I go to my sources and go to plus, there's the VLC video source option. And I could describe the video. In this case, I'll keep it really generic because it's just an example. And here we've actually got an option to loop a playlist. I don't really want to do that because I want to show you one video on this particular scene and only one. I'm going to go to the plus sign, add the file. You can also add a directory or a path or URL. So I've got my video here. And if I click OK, you'll see that I've got my video on the screen. So until I actually sort of click onto that, it won't play automatically. One thing I have noticed is that my normalized videos come in very, very loud in OBS Studio. So if I click on the little cog and go to advanced audio properties, I can actually bring these down in volume. And I'm finding I do need to bring these down quite a bit. So I think minus 6 dB was sort of what I was aiming at before. And if I hide this video for a second and I bring it in, the thing you want to sort of make sure is that the volume doesn't get too far into the reds, because if it's constantly in the red, it's going to distort. So the yellow section is really where we want to spend most of our time. And you'll see that there's this little red dot that will give you an indication of how loud this is going to be. The other thing that's probably worth noting is, and you won't be able to hear this in this demonstration, but I certainly can't hear this video at the moment either. So what I can do is if I go back to the cog, to the advanced audio properties, I can turn on the monitoring. So if I want to actually listen to this as well, I can select that option and I can close that. And again, you'll have to take my word for it a little bit, but I can sort of hear the audio of this one now. So, all right. So we've got our start screen. We've got our introduction. I can share the browser. And again, like this is just Chrome. You can share any kind of application that's on your computer in a similar fashion, either with the window capture, the display capture. The browser capture is a little bit different. So I probably wouldn't recommend that unless you had a really good reason for including it. Often it's used for embedding chat widgets into your screen, which is something you certainly can do. We've obviously got this nested scene. And again, like I say, if I ever bump my camera, if I need to tweak this, it's really good to have it in one location so I don't have to change it everywhere. I can just change it in that one place that I really need to. So those are the kinds of things that are worth thinking about, and there are so many different sources. You can certainly extend them with additional plugins from OBS Studio. It's something I'll talk about in a future video. And the other thing too, the other nice thing about having it's your own little John camera, in this case, the camera as sort of its own scene that can be nested in other scenes, is that I could add additional cameras in here. So if you're about to have a meeting and your main camera stops working, you could potentially add another camera in. So maybe I would have my Logitech. I know it's not plugged in at the moment, so I can't show you this right now. But potentially I could sort of go in to my video capture device. I could find maybe my second camera. I could select it from the list. And again, I don't really have anything I can demonstrate right now, but just take my word for it. So maybe we had the Logi capture there in there, and I could sort of have that in there, and I can just literally disable the one that I don't want to use and make sure that the other one is available. And again, because that's a nested scene, that will be reflected in all the other places you've used that scene. So there's so much you can do with OBS. It's an amazing piece of software, and I'm always impressed how good it is, given that it is literally free. I'd love to hear about your experiences with OBS. So if you're just starting out, if you're an experienced user, if you've got some tips and tricks you'd like to share with the rest of the world, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. So that's how I build scenes in OBS Studio, and I'm always curious to see how other people construct their scenes. So if you are using OBS, and a lot of people have indicated that they are, I'd love to hear about it. We're actually joined in the chat on LinkedIn today by the man, the myth, the legend, Garen Belaney from Micro Studio. Great to see you there, Garen. And he's complimenting the setup, which is very, very gratifying. I'm a big fan of everything he does. He tends to sort of travel and be a virtual presenter in all kinds of wonderful places, where I'm much more a homebody. I sort of have my setup at home, and I like to sort of stay here. But it's great to sort of see you there in the chat, and thank you for joining me this morning. That's pretty much all I've got for you today. Thank you to everyone that joined me on YouTube and LinkedIn this morning. I say this morning, it's morning in Australia. It's probably a whole other thing in wherever you're situated, but thank you for joining me. Really appreciate it. Hope to bring you more of these live sessions in the coming weeks. I really want to show you how I use my Stream Deck with OBS Studio and talk about some of the plugins I use. So again, thanks so much for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.